Captain Hansol Kim walked through the peaceful streets of New Seoul Colony, on the outer rim planet of Terra Nova. The settlement had grown from a small mining outpost to a thriving community of 50,000 humans in just 2 decades. Children played in the parks while their parents worked in the vertical farms and manufacturing plants. The colony represented everything humanity had achieved since joining the Galactic Council 15 years ago. Peaceful expansion, technological progress, and hope for the future. Hansol commanded the colony's small defense force, though their duties mostly involved settling disputes between miners and ensuring shipping routes remained clear of pirates. The Galactic Empire had promised protection to all member species, and humanity had gladly accepted their place among the stars as a junior partner. They contributed raw materials, manufactured goods, and served in non-combat roles throughout the galaxy. Dr. Myung Park, the colony's chief scientist, had been working on something exciting in her laboratory. She claimed to have discovered a new method of energy generation that could revolutionize space travel. Her research team included her husband, engineer Dong-hyun Park, and several other brilliant minds who had volunteered for this frontier assignment. The warning came too late. Long-range sensors detected the approaching ships just hours before they arrived. These weren't the usual trade vessels or council patrol ships. The signatures were unknown, and they moved with deadly purpose. Hansol tried to contact the Galactic Council for assistance, but all communication channels had been mysteriously blocked. When the alien ships opened fire without warning, the colony's basic shields lasted mere minutes. The attackers moved through the settlement with surgical precision, targeting specific locations and individuals. These weren't raiders looking for resources. They were assassins with a list. As explosions rocked the colony and alien soldiers moved through the streets, Hansol realized that humanity's peaceful existence in the galaxy had just ended in the most brutal way possible. The alien assassins called themselves the Vextai, and they were like nothing humans had ever seen before. Their skin was gray like stone, and their eyes glowed red in the darkness. They wore armor made of black metal that seemed to absorb light, making them nearly invisible when they moved through shadows. Their weapons were terrible things that fired beams of pure energy. These beams could cut through steel walls like a hot knife through butter. They could burn holes in concrete or turn a human body to ash in seconds. The Vextai moved faster than any human could run, and they never seemed to get tired. Young Min Lee had been a soldier on Earth before he came to work as a colonial administrator. He knew about fighting and weapons, but he had never faced an enemy like this. The Vextai did not just attack randomly. They had a plan and they followed it with cold precision. They were hunting specific people, and they had detailed information about everyone in the colony. They knew where the scientists lived and where the engineers worked. They had pictures and names and addresses. Someone had given them everything they needed to find their targets. Dr. Myung Park became their #1 target. The moment they landed, they went straight for her laboratory like they knew exactly where she would be. Her husband Dong-hyun was working late that night when the aliens broke down the door of the science building. Dong-hyun was not a soldier, but he was brave, and he loved his wife. He grabbed a heavy wrench from his toolbox and tried to fight the Vextai. The aliens moved like liquid shadow, dodging his clumsy swings and striking back with weapons that burned the air where they passed. He could not hurt them, but he could slow them down. He threw tables and chairs in their path and activated the laboratory security systems that locked doors and triggered fire suppression systems. The aliens cut through everything, but it bought precious minutes for Myung to escape. She ran through the emergency tunnels that connected all the important buildings in the colony. These tunnels were built in case of natural disasters, but now they were the only safe way to move around the settlement. The Vextai seemed to know about the main passages, but they had missed some of the smaller maintenance tunnels. Young Min Lee was trying to organize the evacuation when he realized what was happening. The aliens were not just killing people. They were sorting them into groups. Scientists and military officers were being killed or captured. Everyone else was being herded into the main plaza like cattle. Children cried for their parents while families were torn apart. Mothers begged the aliens to spare their sons and daughters, but the Vextai showed no emotion or mercy. They had their orders and they followed them without question or hesitation. Sujin Choi worked in the Colony Communication Center, and she was one of the few people who understood how the quantum radio systems worked. When the aliens destroyed the main transmitter, she knew she had to find another way to call for help. She crawled through burning buildings, collecting pieces of broken equipment. Her hands were cut and bleeding from handling the sharp metal fragments, but she kept working. She knew that if she could not get a message to Earth, then no one would know what happened to New Sol Colony. In the basement of the old mining station, she found enough working parts to build a basic transmitter. It would only work for a few minutes before the aliens found her, but that might be enough time to warn Earth. The message she sent was short and desperate. The colony was under attack by unknown aliens. The Galactic Council was not responding to calls for help. Humans were being systematically hunted and killed. This was not a random pirate raid, but a planned military operation. As she finished sending the message, Sujin could hear the aliens breaking down the door. Above her, she destroyed the transmitter so they could not use it, then hid in the deepest part of the basement. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the building as they searched for her. The Vextai worked through the night like efficient machines. They had attacked 12 human colonies at the same time, and they were following the same pattern everywhere. Kill the leaders, capture the useful workers, and gather the rest for transport to unknown locations. By dawn, most of the colony was under alien control. The few humans who were still free hid in the deepest tunnels or the most remote buildings. They had no weapons that could hurt the Vextai, and no way to call for help from outside young men. Lee gathered a small group of survivors in an abandoned mine shaft far from the main colony. They had some food and water, but no real weapons. The aliens controlled everything above ground and showed no signs of leaving anytime soon. Dr. Mi Young Park sat in the darkness trying to remember every detail of her energy research. She had destroyed all the written records, but the knowledge was still in her head. If she could somehow get back to Earth, that information might be the key to saving humanity from whatever was coming next. The survivors could hear explosions in the distance as the Vextai destroyed anything they could not use. They were erasing all traces of human civilization from Terra Nova like they were cleaning up after a messy job. The message was clear. To anyone still alive, humans were not welcome in this part of space anymore. The emergency meeting in Earth Global Defense Council lasted for 2 full days. Admiral Taehyun Kim sat at the big table with military leaders from every nation on Earth. The message from Terra Nova had reached them just 12 hours after Sujin Choi sent her desperate warning, and now they knew humanity was at war. For 15 years, Earth military forces had been getting smaller and smaller. Humans were supposed to be peaceful traders and builders in the galactic community. There was no need for big armies or powerful warships when the Galactic Empire promised to protect all member species from danger. Now that promise had been revealed as a lie, worse than that the Empire itself had sent assassins to murder human colonists. Admiral Taehyun Kim looked at the faces around the table and saw fear and anger in equal measure. They had been caught completely unprepared for this betrayal. President Jin Oh authorized the activation of secret military projects that had been hidden for years deep under the ice in Antarctica. Construction teams began working on something that the public thought was a scientific research station. In reality, it was humanity's first real warship in over a decade. The ship had been designed in secret by engineers who worried that joining the galactic community might someday prove dangerous. They called it a deep space exploration vessel in all the official documents, but its real purpose was to defend Earth from threats that the government hoped would never come. Dr. Kyung-ho Nam was Earth's leading expert on alien behavior and psychology. He had studied every species in the Galactic Council and written reports about their cultures and motivations. Now he was asked to analyze the attack patterns on the human colonies and figure out what the aliens really wanted. After 3 days of studying the reports, Dr. Nam came to a frightening conclusion. The attacks were not random violence or territory disputes. The Vextai had detailed intelligence about human technology and capabilities. Someone had been watching and planning this operation for years. More bad news arrived every day. Reports came from other human colonies throughout the galaxy. 12 settlements had been hit at exactly the same time using exactly the same tactics. Thousands of humans were dead, missing, or captured, and the pattern was always the same. The aliens targeted scientists, engineers, and military personnel first, then they rounded up everyone else for transport to unknown locations. It was not conquest. It was systematic elimination of anything that might threaten their plans. The human race was being reduced to slavery or extinction. Admiral Tai Hyun. Kim tried to contact his brother Han Sol on Terra Nova, but there was no response from any of the attacked colonies. The communication networks that connected human settlements had been completely shut down, leaving Earth blind and isolated. When Earth ambassadors finally reached the Galactic Council, headquarters on the central world of Nexus Prime, they found the massive building empty except for security robots and automated systems. The council members had disappeared without explanation, leaving only a single message crystal waiting in the main chamber. The recording showed Overlord Kethmar, the insectoid ruler of the Galactic Empire. His compound eyes showed no emotion as he spoke in the flat mechanical voice that all his species used when making official announcements. The message was simple and terrifying. Humanity had developed too quickly and posed a potential threat to galactic stability. The decision had been made to reduce human population to manageable levels and relocate survivors to designated worlds under direct Imperial control. Any resistance would result in complete extinction of the human species. Admiral Tai Hyun. Kim crushed the message crystal in his armored fist. The sound of breaking ceramic echoed through the empty council chamber like a gunshot. He looked at the other human ambassadors and saw his own rage reflected in their faces. For 15 years, humanity had trusted the Galactic Empire to keep them safe. They had reduced their military forces and focused on peaceful expansion, believing that cooperation and trade would protect them from the dangers of space. Now they knew the truth. The Empire saw them as a threat to be eliminated, not partners to be protected. Every human colony, every scientific advance, every peaceful gesture had been watched and evaluated by alien minds that saw only danger in human potential. The time for trust and cooperation was over. Back on Earth, the secret construction project was moving faster than anyone thought possible. Factories that had been making consumer goods were converted to military production in a matter of weeks. Engineers worked around the clock to build weapons and systems that had only existed on paper. The ship taking shape in the Antarctic facility was unlike anything humans had ever built before. It was designed not for exploration or defense, but for a very specific kind of warfare. The kind that struck from shadows and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Admiral Tai Hyun Kim stood in the observation deck watching workers install the final systems. The ship would be ready in less than 2 months, and then humanity would begin teaching the galaxy what happened when peaceful species were pushed too far. The shipyards on Mars worked day and night as humanity prepared for war. Every factory that had been making peaceful trade goods was converted to military production. Workers who had been building passenger ships now welded armor plates and installed weapon systems on vessels designed for very different purposes. The secret ship being built under Antarctic ice was designated HFY Avenger, but the crew who would serve on it came to call it something that better described its mission. Chief Engineer Boram Shin supervised the installation of technology that pushed human engineering beyond anything they had attempted before. The Avenger was built using alien technology, salvaged from the colony attacks human scientists had reverse engineered. Fextai weapons and armor, creating improved versions that were designed specifically to fight the aliens who had betrayed them. The hull was made from crystallized metal that could absorb energy weapon hits. The ship's power came from Dr. Mi Young, Park's energy research, which she had reconstructed from memory after escaping Terra Nova. The new reactor could generate more power than anything humans had built, before giving the Avenger speed and weapon capacity that would surprise anyone who underestimated human engineering capability. Captain Duyan Yang received command of the Avenger, even though she was only 32 years old. Her promotion came from perfect scores in every combat simulation and a psychological profile that showed exactly the right combination of tactical brilliance and ruthless determination needed for what humanity was planning. The crew selection process was unlike anything in human military history. They needed soldiers who could fight a war without rules, while still remembering what they were fighting to protect. Sergeant Il-sung Park led the ground combat team. and his quiet intensity made him perfect for missions that others might refuse to attempt. Training exercises revealed the true nature of humanity's response. The Avenger was not designed to fight enemy fleets in open battle. It was built to strike from shadows, hit targets that others would consider off-limits and disappear before anyone could strike back. Its crew, trained in tactics that civilized species would call criminal Dr. Hyejin Ko, served as the ship's tactical analyst, and she spent months studying Galactic Empire infrastructure. She identified the weak points that kept their vast civilization running smoothly. Communication, hub supply depots, administrative centers, and the homes of important officials were all mapped and categorized for potential targeting. The Empire ruled through overwhelming force and the fear of retaliation, but even giants had pressure points that could bring them to their knees. Hyejin Ko developed attack plans that would strike at the heart of imperial power, while avoiding the heavily defended military bases where they expected attacks to come. Training simulations pushed the crew to their mental and physical limits. They practiced boarding actions on alien ships, assault missions on hostile planets, and extraction operations in the middle of enemy territory. Every exercise was designed to prepare them for fighting an enemy that outnumbered them by millions to one. The weapon systems installed on the Avenger were designed for efficiency rather than honor. Quantum torpedoes that could destroy enemy ships before they knew they were under attack. Stealth fields that made the ship invisible to most sensor types, boarding pods that could cut through enemy hull armor like it was paper bow ram. Shin worked 18-hour days to ensure every system was perfect. She knew that the crew would have no backup and no support. Once they left Earth, if something broke in the middle of enemy territory, they would have to fix it themselves or die trying. The margin for error was zero. Captain Du Yan spent her time studying the psychological profiles of Imperial leaders. She needed to understand how they thought and what they feared in order to hurt them in ways that would have maximum impact. Physical destruction was only part of the mission. The real goal was to make them afraid. The final test came when the Avenger was launched from its hidden construction facility. The ship performed perfectly in all trials, and the crew demonstrated that they were ready for the mission ahead. Admiral Taehyun Kim watched from Earth as the vessel that represented humanity's transformation from victims to predators prepared to enter hyperspace. In the month since the colony attacks, humanity had changed from a peaceful trading species to something far more dangerous. They had learned that the galaxy was not safe for those who could not defend themselves. Now they were going to teach that same lesson to the aliens who had tried to destroy them. The Avenger disappeared into hyperspace carrying a crew of 150 humans who had volunteered for a mission. They might not survive. They were going into the heart of enemy territory to begin a war that would decide whether humanity would live free or die as slaves. The Avenger's first mission took them deep into Vextai territory, using hyperspace routes that were not on any official star charts. Captain Do-yeon Yang guided her ship through gravitational anomalies and cosmic dust clouds that hid them from enemy sensors. The aliens who had attacked human colonies with such confidence were about to learn what it felt like to be hunted. The Vextai had never experienced attack on their homeworld. Their entire military was designed for striking at weaker species and then disappearing before retaliation could arrive. They had no experience defending their own territory against an enemy that could match their stealth and exceed their ruthlessness. When the Avenger emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vextai system, their defense fleets moved to intercept what they thought was a lost human cargo ship. The aliens had grown arrogant from easy victories against peaceful colonies. They expected humans to surrender or beg for mercy. Lieutenant Commander Woo Jin Lee coordinated the attack from the ship's advanced command center. The Avenger's weapons were not designed for fair fights. They were built to eliminate enemies with maximum efficiency and minimum risk to the crew. The first salvo of quantum torpedoes destroyed 3 Vextai warships before they could raise their shields. The second wave of missiles targeted the orbital defense platforms that protected the aliens' most important military installations. The third attack destroyed the communication satellites that connected the Vextai homeworld to the rest of the Empire. Within minutes, the aliens went from confident hunters to confused and isolated prey. But the real terror began when Sergeant Il-sung Park's team deployed to the planet's surface. Using stealth suits reverse-engineered from captured Vextai equipment, the human soldiers moved through alien cities like ghosts in the night. Their mission was specific and brutal: eliminate the leadership that had planned humanity's genocide. The Vextai had spent generations as the Galactic Empire's most feared assassins. They were used to being the hunters who struck without warning and disappeared before their victims could fight back. Now they experienced the other side of that equation as human soldiers demonstrated that even the most dangerous predators could become prey. Il-Sung Park led his team through the aliens' capital city, using intelligence gathered from captured enemy communications. They knew exactly which buildings contained the military commanders who had ordered the attack on human colonies. They knew where the scientists lived, who had developed the weapons used against peaceful settlements. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Vextai leaders who had never felt fear in their lives now cowered in reinforced bunkers, while human soldiers eliminated their subordinates with surgical precision. The aliens sent desperate messages to Imperial headquarters begging for help that would not arrive in time. Dr. Hyejin Ko coordinated intelligence operations from the Avenger, using captured alien technology to intercept enemy communications and identify high-value targets. Her network of human agents began spreading throughout Imperial space, gathering information about collaborators and enablers who had supported the genocide campaign. The Empire had thought they could eliminate humanity quietly without facing any real resistance. They believed that a few surgical strikes would reduce human population to manageable levels and that the survivors would accept their fate as defeated slaves. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could imagine. Captain Do-Yeon Yang stood on the Avengers Bridge, reading reports from across the galaxy. Human resistance groups were fighting back using weapons and tactics provided by mysterious supply runs from her ship. Former victims were becoming predators, and the Empire's plans for controlled extermination were falling apart. The Vextai homeworld burned as human soldiers completed their mission. The alien assassins who had seemed unstoppable were retreating from their own cities while their government collapsed in chaos. Their military commanders were dead. Their research facilities were destroyed and their confidence was shattered forever. Young survivors from the human colonies watched from hidden bases as the Avenger broadcast footage of Vextai cities under attack. The message was clear. To every human who had lost family or friends in the genocide, humanity would not forgive, and they would not forget. Every attack on human settlements would be repaid tenfold. The final phase of the operation involved broadcasting captured Imperial communications throughout the galaxy. Other alien species learned that the Empire had been planning similar operations against anyone who showed too much independence or technological progress. Fear began spreading through Imperial territory as subject races realized they might be next, as the Avenger prepared to leave Vextai space. Captain Do-Yeon Yang received a message from the alien government, offering to negotiate a ceasefire. Her response was broadcast on every frequency the Empire used. The hunt had only just begun, and it would continue until every being responsible for human deaths had paid the ultimate price. The ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a broken enemy and a clear message to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the peaceful species that had joined the galactic community seeking friendship and trade. They had been forged into something far more dangerous by betrayal and genocide. 6 months after the first colony attack, the Galactic Empire faced a threat unlike anything in their history. The Avenger had become a ghost story told in whispers throughout their territory. Imperial officials traveled with massive escorts, but even that didn't guarantee safety from the human ship that seemed to strike whenever and wherever it chose. Overlord Kethamar called an emergency session of the ruling council after the Avenger destroyed a major Imperial research station. The facility had been developing improved assassination protocols for use against human colonies. Its destruction not only eliminated key personnel, but also freed hundreds of alien prisoners who had been used as test subjects. Captain Do-Yeon Yang stood on the Avengers Bridge, studying intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Human colonies were fighting back using tactics and equipment provided by her ship's mysterious supply runs. Former victims were becoming predators, and the Empire's careful plans for controlled genocide were collapsing into chaotic warfare. The breaking point came when the Avenger penetrated the Empire's capital system and broadcast Dr. Mi-Young Park's research data to every inhabited world. The energy generation technology that had triggered humanity's persecution was released freely to all species. The Empire's control was based on technological superiority, and humanity had just shattered that foundation. Admiral Tae-hyun Kim received reports that Vexatai assassination squads were withdrawing from human territory. The aliens who had seemed unstoppable were retreating in the face of human retaliation. Other species were beginning to question the Empire's authority, and some were openly rebelling against imperial rule. The final confrontation came when Overlord Kethmar offered to negotiate a ceasefire. Captain Do Yun-Yang's response was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Humanity would accept nothing less than the complete dismantling of the Galactic Empire and the trial of all those responsible for genocide. The species that had joined the galaxy seeking peace had been forged into something far more dangerous. Liberators who would not rest until every victim was avenged and every tyrant brought to justice. The Empire had created their own nemesis, and now they would face the consequences of teaching humanity that mercy was a luxury they could no longer afford.